Your Highness, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Noor Al-Swaidi. I'm here from Abu Dhabi Art. And we want to give a warm and gracious thank you to Mr. and Mrs. Villain for hosting us in this beautiful Japanese-designed garden with their amazing private collection on view for all of us to enjoy. And I'd also like to say that today, Maya will be moderating this amazing panel of collectors and talent. Maya Allison needs no introduction. She is the founding executive director of NYU Abu Dhabi's Art Gallery. She is also the chief curator of NYU Abu Dhabi. And she's also curating the UAE Venice Biennale 2022 that's hosting one of our favorite artists, Mohammed Ahmed Ibrahim. So Maya, I'll give it to you. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And here you go. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Noor. It's really just such a pleasure to see everybody gathered here, and I want to welcome Sheikh Zayed. Thank you so much for joining us. Okay. I, of course, thank, first of all, Mr. and Mrs. Balain for hosting this lunch. And this moment came about in part because we have opened an exhibition that looks at the life, at the work collected by a woman 50 years ago, now on view. And in the course of thinking about this exhibition, I realized how important the role of the collector is in the writing of art history. And that we think about collecting, famously auction house stories, things like this. But in fact, when you collect art, you are part of the making of art history. And I want to talk today with my guests about this subject. And I first need to thank also the NYUAD Art Gallery team, particularly Sebastian Gruber and Wafa Jadala, who made this event possible. And our media partners, the National Yalla Magazine, Al-Ittihad, Harper's Bazaar Art Book, and Al-Bayan for their continued support. So this event is a partnership with Abu Dhabi Art, and I thank Abu Dhabi Art for making this possible. Okay, so I'm going to start with a set of questions for our esteemed collectors, and I will introduce you, and I will ask you to continue that introduction of yourself by telling us about your collection. And then we will proceed to a short conversation with questions and answers from the audience if you wish. And I know it's warm, so we'll keep it brief and to the point. But first, we have to start with Sheikh Zayed, a patron, a collector, and the founder of UAE Unlimited as well, and a longtime collector in the UAE, but also internationally. And I first met you 2015 or 14, and in that moment...
Has it been that long, actually, Maya?
It's been forever.
God.
We were children. We were children. And in that moment, you told me the story of how you began enjoying and appreciating art. And can you tell us the story of how your collection began?
I'm happy that we have an individual here who has been also kind of key to the way that we've been collecting. She's been my mother's friend for years. And she definitely had her part to play in all of that. And of course, I can never forget my lovely art advisor, Pia, who has also been one of the first, actually the first auction I ever went to was with her in Paris, which is a fact, something we cannot change, but I'm sure if they had CCTV cameras, they would agree on that note. But I think that one of the things that is very difficult is that, and something that I want to talk about, is that when we really define or put into stone what art is, then we've lost the message completely, because I think art is always revisited, and I think that with time, art can seem very different, because in context of when you look back to it, actually with a lot of academia when it came to art, was that they were trying to promote unfashionable art at the time. Okay. And so that changed the whole perspective of things. So when you think about like the way that we love Impressionism, Impressionism was never popular in its time in terms of major collectors. It became popular because some people became adamant in their academic outlook that they were like, no, these people need to be recognized and they need to have a voice in all of this, and we can't just disregard it. I have the lovely Isabelle de la Bruyère as well here with us, and she's someone who definitely opened my eyes on on a global scale of what art could be. She definitely showed me things that were out of my comfort zone that I, with time, learned to appreciate and accept and understand as well. So it made me a better human being with it in the process.
Amazing, thank you. I'm going to continue down the line. I'm coming back. I'm not finished asking questions of you. But next up is Mitta Prabakar, entrepreneur, collector, and art patron who's been based in the UAE for over 4 decades. Her collection focuses on South Asian contemporary art, and many of you may have visited the Ishara Art Foundation, which is built on her collection. Tate Modern Advisory Committee, Acquisitions Committee, Middle Eastern Circle of Guggenheim Museum, and Peggy Guggenheim Collection. So very much like your neighbor, you are both advising and supporting collecting activities in museums, but also your own personal collection, which is now forming a foundation. Tell us the beginning of this story.
I don't know how, does this work? Yeah,
Yes.
it does. Okay, I didn't know how to work it. Firstly, I want to thank Fairuz for a very nice lunch. Thank you.
Indeed.
Maya, thank you for putting me up on this panel, which is very prestigious. And Your Highness, I mean, sitting next to you is a dream, okay? So I hope the photographs look good. Otherwise, I'm going home, right?
We will make sure.
Okay, so that's the deal. Maya, your question, for me, collecting has been my personal journey. So every work that I've collected has spoken of what I was at that time in my life. So it kind of resonates with how I have moved forward. So when I started with the moderns, which you're showing. They were my moment. But today, I'm into the contemporary space. The reason is we all change as we get older. Our ideas change and our capacity to understand more and more. Yep. So I would say my collection is a testimonial to the time that I've spent in the UAE as a person, as a diasporic Indian, and it reflects all those facets that I have built myself on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And if you have a chance to visit the Ishara Art Foundation while you're here, I really recommend it.
Thank you.
Okay. Now,
I do too. By the way, I do too. It's a beautiful, beautiful foundation with a beautiful message to the world.
Thank you. Really, it's showing 14 photographers, 10 of whom don't have galleries, have never had an exhibition before, and for them, it's their first outing. So to be on a stage where they can be seen by all the audience here, it's a dream come true. And it's a dream come true for me too, in many, many ways. Thank you.
Thank you. Alejandra, Castro, Rio Seco. How's that?
Correctly.
Thank you. And I will keep this short, but I think the most important thing for us to know is, in addition to being an active board member of prestigious institutions and organizations, such as the Frederick Chopin Foundation in Poland, the Museo del Barrio in New York City, and the International José Limón Ballet, as well as Guggenheim Abu Dhabi, she also has founded MIA, M-I-A, which is a private art collection with a global footprint aimed at promoting women artists and their work. Now I'm going to stop there because I want to ask you the story of how you began this collection and the decision to collect and the details of exactly what it is, this MIA Art Foundation.
It's okay? You listen? The first, thank you for inviting me to this beautiful house, Fairuz, for open your house for this special moment for the art. Thank you for NYU for put all these fantastic person here in the group, and of course our king. I don't know say in Dubai, but in España is our rey or nuestro príncipe. Thank you so much, and for inviting you. The beginner, but I don't remember too much what is the beginner because I'm collector like 12 years ago. But my collection is only female artists. My collection have more than 900 pieces of art in the world from the different women to the different countries, culture, age, and point of view. I love the art. For me, the art is part of the life, is a style of the life, is history. When the people know, study history, understand what happened with the art, of course. But in my case, in my point of view, I'm feminist, and I want to promote and help the work of the women in the world. And when I'm observing what happened in the art, I see the inequality in the art is no different than inequality in other sectors of the life for the women. And for the women, it's very difficult to many things, and the art is not the exceptional things. And I'm create my collection. I buy art in the beginner, like a normal collectors. The collection people need a little more responsibility for do something. No? It's not only collection, it's not only put your art in one storage, It's, I think, show your art, teach about your art, and the other people learn about what you're doing. For this reason, I'm create Mia Anywhere, and the first virtual museum for only female artists. Mia collection create one scholarship for women artists in the world. And too many activities, expositions, and exhibition for visibility of the women's art in the world. That's the short story.
Beautiful.
Sorry for my English, please. But
and I understand that the collection is online. So
part of the collection is online, but the collection is in the different part of the world. Now is too many pieces in different museums, important museums in the world. You can see piece of art of my collection.
Okay, great. And finally, the esteemed Mrs. Fayrouz Villain. We're so happy to be able to see your collection in person. And so everyone here now has walked through and seen the different rooms. And when I first encountered your collection, I was so surprised to see the range and the extent of the work just living in your house. And I would love to hear the story of the beginning, but first I need to make sure people know who you are.
But first of all, Maya, I think that we all deserve to give Fayrouz a round of applause for hosting us. She's been fantastic. She's been a lovely human being to not just the art community, but the community in whole.
Yes. Mrs. Verlaine, who is, in addition to having been awarded the prestigious title of Chevalier des Arts et des Lettres, my French is not so good, but you understand. She is also a patron of Les Amis du Centre Pompidou de Paris, and the Association Porte Ouverte sur l'Art. See, I'm working on it. And a founding member of the Louvre Abu Dhabi Patrons Circle, as well as an active supporter and patron of Abu Dhabi Art. The list goes on, but we're going to stop there for now because I want to hear this story.
You hear me?
Yes.
First of all, I have to thank my husband.
Another round of applause.
Because when I met Jean-Paul, he was already a collector. And he had African art collection. He told me, I don't like it because I didn't buy good quality. Let's sell it. And we start. We were living in Paris. He sent me to the École du Louvre to learn 18th century furniture and art. And finally, the taste has changed. We moved to Abu Dhabi. We left our furniture in France, in the storage. And slowly we start to look around. Collecting for me is a kind of love, because I love everything's beautiful. We start selling we sell our furniture collection, and we start to buy in Middle East. And we were always eclectic in our shows. And since we are in Abu Dhabi, we focus in the Middle East, because it's my country. I was born in Syria. And to look to all this art around is really a gift.
Combination, right? To think about the past and the present together in your collection in particular. I see this happening. Beginning of your collection, starting with the modern masters and then moving into the contemporary. And when Abby Weed Gray, whose collection, when she was collecting in the 1960s, these artists were not famous yet. They were sort of locally known or somewhat famous, and now they're masters. So buying contemporary art is the step towards this. I mean, and this is between the artist producing, the collector, and the museum. And a collector can be a patron, an archivist, a commissioner, a connoisseur, more. It goes on. How do you view yourself? How do you view your relationship to the collection that you're making? Would you think of yourself, Your Highness, do you think of yourself as a commissioner? I know you are. Do you have a way that you frame what you're doing? Oops.
I think the term commissioner, if we think about it in general, means that we're creating for the sake of who has commissioned the work. And you might create something that seems created for you. And I don't think that that's what artists want at the end of the day. I think that in general, we all start collecting, and one of the weird things is that you only realize when you kind of reflect. Like, the reason why I actually have Middle Eastern contemporary and modern now as well art collection was because of Alejandra, the Canvas Art magazine. I bumped into him randomly back in the day in London, and we used to host him in our house. And we used to have a great time. We used to have artists over, we used to have collectors, but I never really got into it. And I remember specifically being on Sloane Street, and I hear someone call me out from the background, and it was Alejandra, and he goes, Sheikh Zayed, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm just walking around. And he's like, do you have any plans for lunch? I was like, no. He's like, let's grab lunch together. So I told him, what brings you to London? Why are you here in town? And he goes, I'm here because we have one of the most transformational shows for Middle Eastern art happening in London right now, because Saatchi is showing a show on art in the region, and it's such a pivotal moment for everyone. And I remember specifically telling him, I was like, I don't like contemporary art. I was like, kids could do that. And he scolded me right there and then. He's like, Sheikh Zayed, please don't say that. He's like, please understand that you should be proud of what the region is producing, and I really recommend that you go see it. Don't forget that, like, I think that you learn from what you experience. So that's all I knew. And when you come and compare it to contemporary, it's such a clash. It's so different. And so I couldn't get my head around it. And in all honesty, I didn't even go. So while I was walking down King's Road the following day, Saatchi was right there in my face, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go and see this show. I was like, I must. I went and I saw it, and because it said gallery, for me, anything that said gallery in those days when I was in university meant that you could buy. So I was like, I remember seeing a couple of works, and when I went down to the reception, I was like, I'm interested in, like, what are the prices of the? And they're like, sir, this is a private collection. We do not sell works here. And I was like, okay, fine, no problem. So fast forward, now I realize that most of them, not all of them, most of the works that I actually liked ended up in my collection eventually. But it really put me on that trajectory. And I remember when I was discussing with, so Shoba was, so she's like, you know what? She's like, you should embrace all of this, seeing that you're feeling it. And she helped me start the collection in many ways. And she's been a cornerstone and pillar ever since. And we have a great time, I think, when we come and look at art and understand it. Part of me still doesn't realize that when I started doing all of this was like now a good, 15 years we're talking. It's insane when I come and think about it. But I think that nothing is set in stone. I think that you always look, you're constantly curious. At least I am. I don't think that I can say that about everyone in the world. You're curious and you want to know more. And I think that when you start deconstructing that archaic vision that you have in your head, you understand that you actually collect, even though you don't you can't quite put your finger on why you collect the way you do, but there seems to be a train of thought that in 20, 30 years from now, you kind of look at everything that you've acquired and how you've actually curated your collection, and then you kind of go, actually, this makes sense. I'm actually putting what I cannot put into words into a complete exhibition of things that I admired, whether an artist was promoting female equality around the globe, or whether an artist was promoting sustainability in their own way. And then you kind of understand that all of these things attracted you in the first place. And it represents you as a collector at the same time. And I think that that's very important, is that you want to have a collection that represents how you think to the world. Because when you do have a collection, your collection represents you in more ways than you can even actually have a conversation with a single individual.
If we could just say it, we wouldn't need to make art about it. Yeah? And the same when you're acquiring work or when you're building a collection. So, and this is interesting for the MIA collection and also for the Ishara Foundation, because the questions that you ask about your collecting practice must have to shift over time. And you've just described a shift that you saw in your own recognition of what you were doing. What other shifts have you experienced as you collect, where you change how you think about what you're doing or have decided to actually change your collecting practice, where you say, I'm no longer collecting this, now I only collect that? I think you made this decision very early on, yeah?
Yeah, I'm very agree than when you say, because it's the collection speak about the person in too many sense. For example, in my personal case, I love the equality, but I love the environment, I love animals, and I love too many other things go in the same direction to take care of the world, no? And all the piece of art, for example, Mia collection adquiere, is or need do and represent these things. In our collection, it's not possible to have a piece of art, for example, involucrate animal things or plastic or. I'm very take care about this because I think so. Is say collection have a very big responsibility when you really do. Like hobby, when you do something seriously, no? And it's very important you take care of this one, and you take care what happened in your work. A lot of people talk about the what happened with the war now, with the pandemic and too many things, but I think so the pandemics put in our mind a time for do better things. I don't know if I say correctly, but in the case of the art, it's no different. In the case of the artists, in the case of collectors, it's exactly the same with the government, with the museums, libraries, etc., etc. For this, I think so. I'm very surprised at what happened here in Emirat, for example, about the art, because I see the expo, and the expo is something place for business, but the expo has a beautiful exhibition art. All the event activities relationship with art here is very promote the art, and when the people promote the art, promote the sensibility. Art is sensibility, and too many point of view. I don't know.
Thank you, thank you. How do you see your collecting changing in the future? Do you imagine it changing? Can you think of how it might change? How do you see it 100 years from now?
It will be, in all our cases, we will be chroniclers of a time gone by. And the young people who will be living in that time will look back and say, that's how life was. I mean, you know, if you go to the Taj Mahal, for example, also collectors are also supporting an ecosystem of artisans, of artists, of people who support that entire industry. If you go to the Taj Mahal, for example, Shah Jahan, the Mughal emperor, supported artists who have made motifs that can't be replicated today because they were set with precious stones. But today, that is not a possibility. But people like you, me, and everyone here can go to the Taj Mahal and see how precious stones were cast in marble. So each of us sitting here will be able to, people will be able to look at our collections and say, that's how artistic work or concepts were materialized in that time, 100 years from now. I think that's my view.
Yeah.
I think that it's our love for excellence and getting quality right, and I think that also time makes a huge difference. Is that today we're not so fascinated if people can create fantastic detailing because of the fact that we've become so modern and we have so many different machinery that can help with all of that. But when you come and you put it into the context of that day and age, you understand that it was something that put a standard. And I think that human beings were constantly looking to put a standard on things. That we don't think that life, if we can create such beauty or we can create such dialogue, is that we don't feel like we need to come down from that. It needs to go up and beyond that level. And I think that this has been like the human journey right at the essence of it all, is that we always want to become better. Like right now, climate change, sustainability, these are the big factors, things that we think about. And even as a collector, like today, I honestly, sometimes I'm reluctant on buying things because of shipping. Something as ridiculous as shipping, I was like, I don't want to add to that. And then I was like, if I can buy locally, maybe I should. You know what I mean? But at the same time, you also understand that there might be that one artist that produces that kind of work that makes us all thinking about life differently. And yeah, I want to support that. And I know that I'm in a good position to do all of it.
Does this, it moves something forward, it changes the conversation in a way that is unlike any other way of changing the conversation. Each purchase, each acquisition, but also each moment of studying and understanding and connecting with the message that the artist is sending. I think this is where there's something about art that brings us together.
Honestly, I think that the one defining moment, I think, when it came to going to a museum, for me to understand how you can understand life very differently, was the Malba Museum in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Because I automatically, of course, went to the national museums. And the national museums were built and founded pretty much at the turn of the 20th century, and the whole methodology was to bring European culture to South America. So they had a lot of works, like European works, but it was, in my opinion, a lot of it was very underwhelming. Underwhelming in what sense? That I can see the same European works and stronger works in Europe, and here it was more to kind of educate the masses back in those days. And so went through the museum, nothing really quite stuck, maybe the contemporary section right at the end. But when I went to the Malba, this is where my whole vision of South America, let alone Argentina, entire continent, changed because of that museum. They had a fantastic collection of South American art, beautifully curated, that gave you an idea of everything that South America went through since people moved to South America. This is transformational. This is what actually is worth coming to go and see. And I think that even when it comes to collecting, like when you come and you look at Arab collections in a lot of sense really came off and started off from a nationalistic approach. And I never quite realized that I did that as well for so long, because I wanted to be proud of what the region was producing. And that's why I was collecting Middle Eastern art. And then you kind of look today that, like, actually, nothing is ever created in solitude. It's always been that dynamic. You think of Bibi Zighbi and living across the globe, her friends, who she used to meet. She used to be in South America, she used to be in New York, she used to be a great friend of Tamara de Lempicka. But then you come and you kind of look at Jawad Salim in Iraq. His wife Lorna was from Wales, and she created fantastic stuff. And who knows how much of that influence, because we never kind of had these conversations with these artists at the time, and we never documented. It will be interesting to know that, like, how much did Lorna have an influence on Jawad? How much did his sister Naziha have on his scope of work? Because when you put them into context, they actually kind of look very visually similar. So they must have had that kind of bond where things, through collaboration, created great stuff as well. And you know, and I always like, and now our collecting for Middle Easterners has changed because we understand that we really do enjoy being international. Like, we enjoy what we learn. We're compulsive travelers, Middle Easterners, and we genuinely find everything that we see around the world very intriguing. And I think that we just want to have some input within that kind of dialogue. And so definitely, at least when I come and look at my own collecting, is that similar to our hostess, it's very eclectic, and it will always be that way. I even remember that, like, for instance, like now we have artists like Baya, who are considered naive artists, but at the same time, I went to a brilliant exhibition about 2 years ago in Paris on naive artists, and I think that they've been sidelined for so long that now they're coming into their own. And when you go to that exhibition, it's like once you've seen so much and you've discussed it and you've talked about it, it's time to give it to a new group of individuals to kind of create what is contemporary, what is modern, what affects us today. And I think that that's a major thing that we look at today.
I agree. Good. Mrs. Villain, and you, I want to hear, what is next with your collection? Where to now?
I think I still have many paintings to buy.
More space, more walls.
Yes. I'm working on it.
Okay.
I find still young our collection.
Okay.
Can grow more.
It can grow more. We just need to grow more walls.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. That's what they call a museum. So
I think
this is the future.
Feroz and Jean-Paul Museum is good.
Good. Very good on that note. Okay, so here's the question that you get to leave with and that we can talk about on our way out. What will we be collecting in 100 years? Okay, that's your homework. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Maya.
Shukran. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maya.
Thank you. Thank you.